The forest was quiet, except for the soft rustling of leaves as a tiny bear cub, Milo, stumbled through the underbrush. He had wandered too far from his mother, lured by the sight of a shiny blue butterfly. Now the trees looked taller, the shadows darker, and the sounds of the forest unfamiliar. "Mama!" Milo called out, his voice trembling. No answer. He sniffed the air, hoping to catch her scent, but all he could smell was the damp earth and the faint tang of pine. Just then, a low growl echoed through the trees. Milo froze. His heart pounded as he turned to see two foxes emerging from the bushes, their sharp eyes locked on him. The larger one bared its teeth. "Well, well, what do we have here?" "A lost little bear cub," it sneered. The smaller fox chuckled, circling Milo. "Looks like dinner found us." Milo backed away, his tiny paws trembling. Please, I just want to find my mom," he stammered. The foxes laughed, their voices cold and mocking. "Oh, you'll see her soon enough," the larger fox said, lunging forward. Milo let out a terrified cry and bolted, his small legs carrying him as fast as they could, but the foxes were faster, their laughter echoing behind him as they closed in. Just as Milo thought it was over, a loud roar shattered the silence. The ground seemed to shake, and the foxes skidded to a halt, their ears flattening in fear. Milo turned, his eyes wide, but before he could see what had made the sound, everything went black. When Milo opened his eyes, he was no longer in the forest. The air smelled different, earthy and damp, but not like the woods. He blinked, trying to adjust to the dim light. He was in a cave, its walls rough and cold. A small fire crackled nearby, casting flickering shadows. For a moment he thought he was dreaming, but the sharp ache in his side reminded him of the foxes and their snapping teeth. "You're awake!" a deep voice rumbled. Milo flinched and turned his head. Sitting a few feet away was a massive grizzly bear, his fur a mix of brown and grey, his eyes sharp but not unkind. Milo's heart raced. Was this another predator? But the bear didn't move. He just watched Milo, his expression unreadable. Who are you?" Milo whispered, his voice barely audible. "Name's Grunt," the bear said simply. "Found you being chased by those foxes. Thought you could use some help." Milo's eyes widened. "You saved me." Grunt shrugged. "Didn't do much, just roared. Those foxes are all bark, no bite." Milo tried to sit up, but his legs felt like jelly. "Thank you," he said softly. Grunt didn't respond. Instead, he tossed a fish toward Milo. "Eat. You'll need your strength if you want to find your mother." Milo hesitated. He'd never eaten fish before. His mother always brought him berries and honey, but his stomach growled and he took a small bite. It was strange, but not bad. As he ate, he glanced at Grunt. The older bear was staring into the fire, his face shadowed. "Do you live here?" Milo asked, breaking the silence. "For now," Grunt said. "Caves are good for hiding." "Hiding from what?" Grunt's eyes flicked to Milo, and for a moment, Milo thought he wouldn't answer. But then the older bear sighed. "From the past, from mistakes, from things you can't change." Milo didn't understand, but he didn't press. Instead, he asked, "Will you help me find my mom?" Grunt was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, "The forest is dangerous, especially for a cub like you. Those foxes won't be the only ones looking for an easy meal." "But I can't stay here forever," Milo said, his voice trembling. "I need to find her." Grunt studied him, his gaze piercing. Then he nodded. "All right, but we move at night, less chance of running into trouble." As the sun set, Grunt led Milo out of the cave. The forest was eerily quiet, the only sounds the crunch of leaves under their paws and the occasional hoot of an owl. Milo stayed close to Grunt, his small frame dwarfed by the older bear's bulk. "Stay quiet," Grunt whispered, "and keep your eyes open. If you see or hear anything, tell me." Milo nodded, his heart pounding. He'd never been out at night before. The shadows seemed alive, shifting and twisting in the moonlight. Every rustle of leaves made him jump. They walked for what felt like hours, stopping only to drink from a stream. Milo was exhausted, but he didn't complain. He had to find his mother. He had to. Just as they were about to cross a small clearing, Grunt suddenly stopped, his ears twitching. "Get down!" he hissed, pushing Milo behind a bush. Milo crouched low, his breath caught in his throat. Through the bushes he saw them, the foxes. There were 3 now, their eyes gleaming in the moonlight. They were sniffing the ground, their noses twitching. Milo's heart sank. They were tracking him. "We know you're out there, little bear," the largest fox called, his voice taunting. "You can't hide forever." Milo's paws trembled. He looked at Grunt, but the older bear's face was calm, his eyes focused. "Stay here," Grunt whispered. "No matter what happens, don't move." Before Milo could respond, Grunt stepped into the clearing, his massive frame blocking the moonlight. The foxes froze, their tails bristling. "You're not welcome here," Grunt growled, his voice low and dangerous. The largest fox recovered quickly, smirking. "Well, well, if it isn't Grunt the lone bear. What are you doing with that cub? Trying to play hero?" "Leave," Grunt said, his tone leaving no room for argument. The foxes exchanged glances, but they didn't back down. "We're not afraid of you," the smaller fox sneered. "You're just a washed-up old bear. What can you do?" Grunt didn't respond. Instead, he let out a roar so loud it seemed to shake the trees. The foxes stumbled back, their bravado crumbling. But they didn't run, not yet. Milo watched, his heart in his throat. He wanted to help, but he was too scared to move. What if Grunt got hurt because of him? The largest fox lunged at Grunt, teeth bared. But Grunt was faster. With a swipe of his massive paw, he sent the fox flying into a bush. The other 2 hesitated, their confidence wavering. "Last chance," Grunt said, his voice like thunder. This time the foxes didn't argue. They turned and fled into the darkness, their tails between their legs. Milo let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Grunt turned back to him, his expression unreadable. "Let's keep moving," he said simply. As they walked, Milo couldn't help but feel a surge of admiration for Grunt. But he also noticed the older bear limping slightly, a fresh cut on his shoulder. "You're hurt," Milo said quietly. "It's nothing," Grunt replied, "just a scratch." But Milo wasn't so sure. He wanted to ask more, but something in Grunt's tone stopped him. The night grew darker, the moon hidden behind thick clouds. Milo's legs ached, but he didn't complain. He had to find his mother. He had to. Just as they reached the edge of a dense thicket, Grunt stopped again, his ears twitching. "Do you hear that?" he whispered. Milo listened. At first he heard nothing. Then, faintly, he caught the sound of a familiar voice calling his name. "Milo! Milo! Where are you?" It was his mother. Milo's heart leaped. "It's her!" he cried, forgetting to whisper. He started to run toward the sound, but Grunt grabbed him by the scruff of his neck. "Wait!" Grunt said, his voice urgent. "It could be a trap." Milo froze. A trap. But it sounded just like his mother. Before he could respond, a new voice cut through the darkness, a voice that sent chills down his spine. "Well, well, looks like we've got company," it said. Milo turned, his blood running cold. Standing at the edge of the thicket was a figure he'd never seen before, a wolf, its eyes glowing in the dark. And behind it, more wolves emerged, their teeth bared. Grunt stepped in front of Milo, his body tense. "Stay behind me," he growled. Milo's mind raced. His mother was so close, but now they were surrounded. What were they going to do? The wolves circled them, their eyes gleaming like embers in the dark. Milo pressed himself against Grunt's side, his tiny body trembling. There were too many of them, at least 6, maybe more. Their leader, a massive black wolf with a scar across its muzzle, stepped forward, its lips curled in a snarl. "Grunt," the wolf said, its voice dripping with mockery. "I should have known you'd be involved in this mess." Grunt's eyes narrowed. Razor, still picking on cubs, I see. Razor chuckled, a low, menacing sound. Call it survival. The forest doesn't forgive the weak. Milo's heart pounded. He wanted to run, to scream, but he couldn't move. Grunt's presence was the only thing keeping him grounded. Let the cub go, Grunt said, his voice steady. He's no threat to you. Razor tilted his head, pretending to consider it. No, I don't think so. He's worth more to me alive. Milo's stomach dropped. Worth more? What did that mean? Grunt's muscles tensed, and Milo could feel the older bear's anger radiating like heat. You're making a mistake, Grunt growled. Razor's smirk widened. Funny, I was about to say the same thing to you. Before Grunt could react, one of the wolves lunged from the side, aiming for Milo. Grunt moved faster than Milo thought possible, swiping the wolf away with a powerful blow. The wolf yelped and crashed into a tree, but the others didn't hesitate. They attacked as one, a blur of teeth and fur. "Run, Milo!" Grunt roared, shoving him toward the thicket. Milo stumbled, his legs refusing to cooperate. He wanted to help Grunt, but he was too small, too weak. Tears blurred his vision as he turned and ran, the sounds of the fight echoing behind him. He didn't know where he was going. The forest was a maze of shadows and unfamiliar shapes. Branches scratched his face and roots tripped him, but he kept running. He had to find his mother. He had to. Suddenly, he heard it again. His mother's voice. "Milo! Milo! Where are you?" This time, it was closer. Milo's heart leaped. He followed the sound, pushing through the underbrush. "Mama, I'm here!" he cried. The voice grew louder, more urgent. "Milo, hurry!" He burst into a small clearing, his breath coming in ragged gasps. But what he saw made him freeze. Standing in the clearing wasn't his mother. It was a fox. The same fox that had chased him earlier. The fox grinned, its sharp teeth glinting in the moonlight. "Hello again, little bear," it said. Milo's blood turned to ice. "Ooh, where's my mom?" he stammered. The fox laughed. "Oh, she's around, but you'll have to come with me if you want to see her." Milo backed away, his mind racing. This was a trap. The foxes had been working with the wolves all along. But why? What did they want with him? Before he could think of a way out, the fox lunged. Milo dodged, but the fox was faster. It tackled him to the ground, its claws digging into his fur. Milo struggled, but he was no match for the larger animal. "Let me go!" he cried, kicking and thrashing. The fox laughed again. "Not a chance, little bear. You're coming with us." Just as the fox was about to drag him away, a loud roar split the air. The fox froze, its ears flattening. Milo looked up and saw Grunt charging into the clearing, his fur matted with blood but his eyes blazing with fury. The fox dropped Milo and backed away, its bravado crumbling. "This isn't over," it hissed before turning and disappearing into the shadows. Grunt reached Milo, his breathing heavy. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice rough with concern. Milo shook his head, tears streaming down his face. I thought it was my mom." Grunt's expression softened. "They're clever, these foxes. They know how to manipulate. But we'll find your mother." I promise Milo wanted to believe him, but doubt gnawed at him. What if his mother was already in danger? What if the foxes and wolves had hurt her? As if reading his thoughts, Grunt placed a paw on his shoulder. "We'll figure this out, but we need to move. They'll be back soon." Milo nodded, wiping his tears. He didn't know what to do, but he trusted Grunt. Together they left the clearing, heading deeper into the forest. But as they walked, Milo couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Grunt was limping worse than before, and his breathing was labored. The fight with the wolves had taken a toll on him. "Grunt," Milo said hesitantly, "are you okay?" Grunt didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was quiet. "I've been through worse." Milo wanted to ask more, but before he could, a new sound reached his ears, a faint, rhythmic drumming, like footsteps. Lots of them. Grunt stopped, his ears twitching. "Do you hear that?" Milo nodded, his heart racing. What is it? Grunt's expression darkened. Trouble. The drumming grew louder, closer. Milo's mind raced. Was it more wolves, more foxes, or something worse? Then out of the shadows they emerged. Not wolves, not foxes, but something Milo had never seen before. A group of humans, their faces hard and their eyes cold. They carried strange objects in their hands, and their leader, a tall man with a scarred face, stepped forward, his gaze locking on Milo. "Well, well," the man said, a cruel smile spreading across his face. "Looks like we hit the jackpot." Milo's heart sank. This wasn't just about the foxes or the wolves. This was something bigger, something far more dangerous, and he had no idea how they were going to escape. The humans closed in, their eyes cold and calculating. Milo's heart pounded as he pressed closer to Grunt, his tiny body trembling. The leader of the group, the man with the scarred face, stepped forward, a cruel smile on his lips. "A bear cub," the man said, his voice dripping with satisfaction, "and a full-grown grizzly. This is our lucky day." Grunt growled, a deep, menacing sound that made the humans pause. But they didn't back down. Instead, they raised their weapons, long, sharp sticks with pointed ends. Milo had never seen anything like them, but he could tell they were dangerous. "Stay behind me," Grunt whispered to Milo, his voice low and urgent. Milo nodded, his eyes wide with fear. He wanted to run, but his legs felt like they were rooted to the ground. The scarred man laughed. "You think you can protect him, old bear? You're outnumbered." Grunt's eyes narrowed. "Try me." The man's smile faded, replaced by a look of cold determination. He raised his hand, and the humans moved as one, surrounding Grunt and Milo in a tight circle. Milo's breath caught in his throat. There was no way out. But just as the humans were about to attack, a loud, piercing howl echoed through the forest. The sound was unlike anything Milo had ever heard, haunting and powerful, sending shivers down his spine. The humans froze, their eyes darting nervously. "What was that?" one of them muttered. The scarred man's jaw tightened. "Ignore it. Focus on the bears." But the howl came again, closer this time, and then from the shadows a massive figure emerged. It wasn't a wolf or a fox. It was a bear, but unlike any bear Milo had ever seen. This bear was enormous, its fur a deep, shimmering black. Its eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and its presence seemed to fill the clearing. The humans stumbled back, their confidence crumbling. "What the—" the scarred man began, but he didn't finish. The black bear let out a roar that shook the trees, and the humans turned and fled, their weapons forgotten. Milo stared in awe. Who is that?" he whispered. Grunt's expression was unreadable. "That," he said slowly, "is Shadow. And you don't want to mess with him." The black bear turned its glowing eyes on Milo and Grunt. For a moment Milo thought it might attack them too, but instead it spoke, its voice deep and resonant. "You're lucky I was nearby," Shadow said. "Those humans are dangerous. They've been hunting in these woods for days." Milo's eyes widened. "Hunting? For what?" Shadow's gaze softened slightly as he looked at Milo. "For us. For bears." Milo's stomach dropped. "Why?" Shadow didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned to Grunt. "You've been gone a long time, Grunt. I thought you'd left the forest for good." Grunt's expression darkened. "I had my reasons." Shadow studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Fair enough. But you're back now, and the forest needs you. The humans are planning something big, something that could destroy us all." Milo's mind raced. Destroy them all? What did that mean? Grunt sighed, his shoulders slumping. "I didn't want to get involved, but it seems I don't have a choice." Shadow's eyes flicked to Milo. "And who's this?" "This is Milo," Grunt said. "He's lost. We're trying to find his mother." Shadow's expression softened. "A lost cub, huh? Well, you're in good hands with Grunt, but we don't have much time. The humans are planning to set fire to the forest." Milo gasped. Set fire! Why would they do that? Shadow's eyes darkened. To drive us out, to take over our land. They've done it before in other forests, and now they're here. Milo's heart ached. The forest was his home. It was where he'd grown up, where his mother had taught him everything he knew. He couldn't let it be destroyed. What can we do? He asked, his voice trembling. Shadow looked at him, then at Grunt. We fight. Together. But we'll need help. The wolves, the foxes, they'll have to put aside their differences if we're going to stop this. Grunt's jaw tightened. The wolves and foxes won't help us. They're too busy fighting each other, and us. Shadow's eyes gleamed. Then we'll make them see reason, because if we don't, none of us will survive. Milo's mind raced. Wolves, foxes, and bears working together. It seemed impossible, but if it meant saving the forest, he was willing to try. I'll help, Milo said, his voice firmer than he expected. Grunt looked at him, surprise flickering in his eyes. You're just a cub, Milo. This isn't your fight. Milo shook his head. It is my fight. This is my home, and I'll do whatever it takes to protect it. Shadow smiled, a rare, genuine smile. You've got courage, little one. We'll need that. Grunt sighed, but there was a hint of pride in his eyes. All right, but we stick together. No more running off, understand? Milo nodded, determination burning in his chest. As they prepared to leave the clearing, Milo couldn't shake the feeling that something big was about to happen. The forest was in danger, and it was up to them to save it. But as they walked, a new thought crept into Milo's mind. What if his mother was already caught up in the humans' plans? What if she was in even more danger than he realized? He didn't have time to dwell on it, because just then a loud explosion echoed through the forest, shaking the ground beneath their paws. Milo's heart raced. What was that? Shadow's expression was grim. The humans! They've started! The explosion sent shockwaves through the forest, and the air filled with the acrid smell of smoke. Milo's heart raced as he looked around, his eyes wide with fear. In the distance, he could see flames beginning to rise, their orange glow lighting up the night sky. We're too late, Shadow said, his voice heavy with regret. Grunt's jaw tightened. Number, we're not. We can still stop this. Milo looked at the two bears, his small body trembling. What do we do? Shadow turned to him, his glowing eyes filled with determination. We rally the forest. Every animal, wolves, foxes, deer, birds, we need them all. If we work together, we can put out the fire and drive the humans away. Milo nodded, his fear giving way to resolve. I'll help, whatever it takes. Grunt placed a paw on Milo's shoulder. You've already done more than anyone could ask of you, little one. But this fight isn't over yet. The three of them moved quickly, racing through the forest to gather the animals. Shadow's deep, commanding roars echoed through the trees, calling everyone to action. At first, the wolves and foxes hesitated, their old rivalries flaring up. But when they saw the flames spreading, they realized they had no choice. This isn't about us, the leader of the wolves said, his voice grim. This is about survival. The foxes agreed, their sharp eyes filled with determination. We'll fight for the forest. Together the animals formed a plan. The birds flew to the river, carrying water in their beaks to drop on the flames. The deer and rabbits dug trenches to stop the fire from spreading. The wolves and foxes worked side by side, using their speed and agility to guide the others. And the bears, led by Grunt and Shadow, used their strength to uproot trees and create barriers. Milo did his part too, running messages between the groups and helping wherever he could. Despite his small size, he refused to give up. His courage inspired the others, and soon the forest was alive with the sounds of animals working together. The fire raged on, but the animals didn't back down. They fought with everything they had, their determination unwavering. Slowly, the flames began to die down, the smoke clearing to reveal the charred but still standing forest. As the sun rose, the animals gathered in a clearing, exhausted but victorious. The humans had fled, their plans thwarted. The forest was safe, for now. Milo looked around, his heart swelling with pride. He had never felt so connected to the other animals before. They had put aside their differences and come together to protect their home. But there was still one thing missing. "Milo!" a familiar voice called out. Milo turned, his heart leaping. There, standing at the edge of the clearing, was his mother. Her fur was singed, and she looked tired, but she was alive. "Mama!" Milo cried, running to her. She wrapped him in a tight embrace, her warmth filling him with relief. "I was so worried," she said, her voice trembling. "I thought I'd lost you." "I'm okay, Mama," Milo said, tears streaming down his face. "We all are." Grunt and Shadow approached, their expressions softening as they watched the reunion. "You've got a brave cub there," Shadow said to Milo's mother. She smiled, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you, both of you, for keeping him safe." Grunt nodded, his usual gruffness replaced by a rare warmth. "He's stronger than he looks." As the animals began to disperse, returning to their homes, Milo stayed close to his mother, his heart full. The forest was scarred, but it would heal, and so would they. Moral message. This story reminds us that unity and courage can overcome even the greatest challenges. No matter how big the problem seems, when we work together and stand up for what we believe in, we can achieve the impossible. It also teaches us that even the smallest among us can make a big difference. Just like Milo, who showed that bravery and determination matter more than size or strength. Let's remember to protect our world and stand together, because every voice, no matter how small, can help create a better future.